Oh, welcome back. Oh my goodness. Sorry about that. That was my Life 360 for my son. His battery is low. All right. Here we go, continuing R.L. Stine's Hit and Run, Chapter 4. This is called Depantsed. What in the world is that? I don't know if you know so far, but this is the first R.L. Stine book that I've read that is in third person. He's usually in first person, and he writes in past tense. This seems to be seems to be more in, it is past tense. Okay, but the difference is third person. Wink said, shaking his head. But the brakes, Scott insisted, on the big Volvo roared past the Avondale Mall. No one is buying it, Wink said, turning to look back at Cassie and Eddie. You're just not convincing. You're a bad actor. Scott slowed the car down. His excited face drooped into a disappointed pout. How about you, Eddie? You believe me, didn't you? Winks is right. This was lame. Scott giggled and turned sharply onto the Market Avenue. Some have it, some don't, Wink said. What did I do wrong? Scott asked seriously. I even made it look like I was pumping the brakes. But you didn't sound scared enough, Winks told him. It sounded like a put-on. I'll bet Eddie bought it, Scott said. Eddie didn't reply. A few minutes later, Scott pulled the car up the driveway and into the garage. My parents aren't back, he said, very relieved. The four of them piled out of the car. Nice drive, Cassie said, stretching. Yeah, thanks for the driving lesson, guy. He slapped Eddie on the shoulder. It was kind of fun, Cassie admitted, in a crazy kind of way. I've got to get home, Eddie said. I'll drive you, Winks joked. Eddie didn't smile. See you. He jogged down the driveway to the street. Cassie stared up the sky, searching for the moon, but could only see shades of gray against the gray. She shivered, suddenly chilled. Guess I'd better get home too. I think Eddie was really freaked, Winks said. Cassie and Scott quickly agreed. Yeah, he was freaked, Cassie said. Wink's face lit up with a truly evil just because you can pump them up. Cassie stared down disapprovingly at the gleaming new white sneakers on Scott's feet. They feel good, Scott replied. Real bouncy. He jumped straight up in the air and pretended to shoot a basketball layup. You're blocking the door, she said, flashing him an annoyed look as she ushered her kids away. I can jump 3 feet, Scott said, looking very pleased. Oh, that'll come in real handy during wrestling match, Cassie cracked eye. She kept thinking, if only he weren't such a sheep. They're cool, Scott said, admiring his sneakers, as he followed her out of the store and into the crowded mall. They're way cool. It was Saturday afternoon, and Cassie didn't know what she was doing here with him around the Avondale Mall, watching him buy ridiculously expensive sneakers. Hey, look, 2-for-1 sale on sweatpants, Scott said, pointing to a sign in a window across the wide aisle. Ooh, thrills, Cassie said sarcastically. He stared at her, surprised. Sweatpants, okay? Yeah, maybe they have ones that inflate, Cassie joked. Ha ha! Store. There's a CD I want to buy. Which one? Scott asked. Before she could answer, Winks appeared. He was wearing a bright yellow sweater and green corduroys. How's my favorite married couple? He asked, leering first at Cassie, then at Scott. Buying socks together? Cassie rolled her eyes. The deal. Resume live. I don't know. I'll meet you over there, Cassie said, pointing to the record store. All right. Before she could answer, Winks appeared. He was wearing a bright... we already said that. Cassie rolled her eyes. Scott punched Winks playfully on the shoulder. Where do you get that sweater, Winks? You lose a contest or something? What's wrong with this sweater? Winks asked, fingering his sleeve. It's a little yellow, isn't it? Cassie asked. A little? You look like a Easter chick, Scott told him. Oh my goodness. Happy Easter, Winks said, smoothing the sweater front with one hand. You hear what's happened to Eddie in school yesterday? No, what? Cassie asked, waving across the aisle to some girls she recognized from Avondale North. This is why I like R.L. Stine. He's hilarious. Someone de-pantsed him, Winks said, grinning. Huh? Well, not exactly, Winks said, following Cassie's glance at the girls across the aisle. Actually, some kid took Eddie's pants from his gym locker, you know, while he was in gym, and he had to go to class the rest of the day in his smelly gym shorts. Winks laughed. You should have seen Eddie's face. It was as red as a tomato the whole day. I can just picture it, Scott said, grinning. He snatched his head. Poor Eddie. Eddie's such... Winks replied, pushing his black-rimmed glasses. Eddie believed that Scott had no brakes. Okay. That was so lame, but I just know Eddie believed it. So he's a little gullible, Cassie said. That doesn't explain why everybody has to pick on him all the time. There's some kid like that in every class, Winks said. One kid everyone likes to pound on. Eddie just happens to be that kid. He's used to it. You think so? Cassie asked. Yeah, sure. Sure was, Winks replied. You can jump up and down in them. I knew a guy who couldn't deflate his once. He had them on, Winks said. Who did it to Eddie? Cassie asked, interrupting the sneaker conversation. What? Winks was still staring down at the shiny white sneakers. Who took Eddie's pants from his gym locker? Cassie demanded. I did, of course, Winks said, grinning proudly. Okay, now what's interesting about R.L. Stine, you know how some people, when they do a change of scene and they put the little, what are those stars? You know, in R.L. Stine's book, he keeps it simple. You know what he does? He just hits a second space bar. Simple. All right, I don't know if other books can get through it, but, you know, actually, it let them off 2 blocks from her house, allowing some reluctant rays of sunshine to poke through. Cassie unzipped her coat. The air was still cold, but the sun felt good on her face. It had been a long winter, cold, but with a little snow. I just mentioned, I grew up in New England, and actually New Hampshire until I was like 11, and I can relate to this. So it was a small town called West Lebanon, New Hampshire. My dad worked at Dartmouth College at the time. So, and anyway, we'll just continue. Side note, put his hands on her shoulders and kissed her. It came as a real surprise. The kiss was awkward. He missed her lips and got her chin. His face felt cold against her, as if waiting to judge her reaction. Oh my goodness. React. She had a secret crush on Sky, except the friend he had grown up a block away from. Winks kept saying, we're married, said, blushing a strange smile. on his handsome face. Cassie laughed. Then can do better than that, she said impulsively, and she grabbed the back of Scott's neck, pulled his face down to hers, and kissed him. Their lips on target this time. Yeah, us guys, we like it when the woman takes control. We like it. Don't let the movies fool you. All right. When it ended, they smiled awkwardly at each other. Cassie felt strangely unsettled. Maybe this is wrong, she thought. Maybe I messed up a good friendship here. He reached for her again, but she pulled back. See you later, she said breathlessly, and turned and ran up the drive, leaving him standing there, his expression disappointed and almost sad. Ah, teenage girls. Oh, my goodness. That night, the four of them gathered at Eddie's house after dinner. The small house was hot, almost steamy, and smelled of meatloaf. Huddled in the narrow living room, two on the couch and two on the threadbare carpet, they were discussing what to do. We could go to a movie, Scott said. There's nothing good playing, Cassie told him. I checked. There's a dance at the school, Scott suggested. Plays the dance club on the south side. What are they called? You mean the Rap Maniacs? Eddie asked, small circles of red forming on his cheek. Yeah, they're putrid, Eddie said. They really rot. Might be a hoot, Wink said thoughtfully. No way, Cassie said. I'd rather read my government text. Okay. Wow, she really hates him. Oh my goodness. Especially, if you go to my wife, she hates history. Oh my goodness. All right. Eddie got up from the couch and walked to the picture window in the center of the room. He stared out into the clear, cool night. We could go for a drive, he said, his back to them. The other three reacted in shock. You want to go for another drive after Wednesday night? Cassie asked. She walked over to Eddie and felt his forehead. No temperature. Eddie laughed. We could all use some real driving practice, he said. You know, no fooling around. My parents aren't home, Scott said. I can't get the car. Our car is here, Eddie said, pointing down to the curb. My parents are at a party 2 blocks away. They won't be home till really late. We could take it. Great, Scott exclaimed, climbing to his feet. Eddie turned to Winks. But you've got to promise no jokes. What do you think? Any jokes? We'll see. Winks put on his innocent face. Who, me? We won't need headlights, Cassie cracked. Winks can run ahead of us in that sweater. Everyone laughed but Winks. He yanked at the bright yellow wool. My grandmother bought me this sweater. Your grandmother is colorblind, Eddie said. How do you know? Winks replied. Well, how about Eddie demanded, staring at Winks. Okay, no jokes, Winks agreed, as long as I get a long turn. Cassie's down coat across the room to her. We're all taking the driver's test in the next couple of weeks, right? So we need all the practice we can get. Where should we drive? Cassie asked. There's so much traffic in town Saturday nights. Someone might recognize us. Let's go back on Route 12, Scott suggested. It's so deserted and so straight. It's great for practicing. Okay, Eddie agreed, pulling the blue ski cap over his dark curly hair. Let's do it. The four of them stepped out of the house and headed down the drive, their sneakers crunching over unraked dead leaves. The air was cool and crisp. Someone a few houses down had a fire going in their chimney, sending a tangy pine aroma wafting over the neighborhood. Ooh, I love that smell. Cassie took a deep breath. Such a great smell. So why do you change your mind? She asked Eddie as they walked. I mean, after Wednesday. I was a jerk on Wednesday night, Eddie said, avoiding her glance. I acted like a baby, so I thought I'd make up for it, and I really want to pass the driver's test. I really want to practice so I can get my license, he said, raising his eyes to hers. Cassie felt a chill as she climbed into the back seat. Has a license. It's if something goes wrong, if we're caught. She shook her head hard as if chasing those thoughts from her mind. Okay, thank you for watching, and I really enjoyed our time together. And probably tomorrow morning I'll finish up chapter 5. I'll start on chapter 5 called The Bump in the Road. We have to see what happens. Okay. For those of you who have not seen, this is Hit and Run by R.L. Stine. It's from Point Horror Books. Not, I think there's like 3 or 4 books. And here's the blurb. Eddie doesn't have his license yet, but he figures it won't hurt anyone. If he and his best friends go out for a drive one night, nobody has to know. Then something appears in his headlights. He drives right into it, a person. Eddie and his friends now have a terrible secret to keep, and an enemy from beyond the grave. So, thank you for watching, and for those of you who like YA horror like I do, I have a book and happy reading. Good night. Alright, so we do this, and now